All right, then. Hopefully, YouTube does not put this video down because I played so much of that. So, a piece that you guys are listening to is a piece by Art Farmer. This is from Art Farmer Live 1964. And the guitar player playing on that is none other than Jim Hall. The piece is called Some Time Ago. And I played it to sort of prove a point, which is something that I've always been grappling with, which is this whole concept or this whole notion of virtuosity versus musicality. And, I think as guitar players and musicians in general, we are all fascinated by virtuosos or people with a very, very, very high level of technical ability. That usually refers to speed. How fast can I navigate the fretboard? I think the living definition of virtuosity, if we, divorce ourselves of the guitar, somebody like Paganini. You listen to Caprice 24, any of his other pieces, and then, you know what I mean by virtuosity. You know it when you hear it, put it that way. So, my big struggle comes with do you have to be a virtuoso in order for you to be musical? Short answer is no. Some of my favorite guitars, I would not term them as virtuosos, but I would say they are great guitarists and they're innovators. So I thought of a list of guitar players that I grew up listening to that have been very, very influential in my life, or at least in just uh, my musical journey. You think of folks like Django Reinhardt, Charlie Christian, George Benson, Wes Montgomery, Grant Green, Joe Pass, Kenny Burrell, Barney Kessel, Jim Hall, Bill Frisell, Al Di Meola, Pat Martino, George Van Epps. The list can go on and on and on. And it is not a referendum of who is the greatest guitarist or who is the best jazz guitarist. That's a whole other video about like trying to order that stuff around. I think that's all subjective and that's all personal based upon your taste. But what I want to talk about was virtuosos. Who of that list of some of the folks that I've mentioned would I consider virtuosos? Definitely a guy like Django Reinhardt, I would consider a virtuoso. Again, technical ability to me, I define it as almost like musical jazz shredders, for lack of a better word. Folks who just navigated the fretboard. I'm not talking musical geniuses. There are some great writers, some great composers. We'll talk about that from that perspective. But Django was definitely a virtuoso. The breakneck speed that he navigated that, given the limitations on his left hand, three fingers, crazy stuff. George Benson, definitely would consider him a virtuoso. And I am not talking about the George Benson playing Breezin' or any of those or songs like that or on Broadway. You got to go back old school to like the Cookbook. Man, you listen to that album, breakneck speed, technical abilities galore. Very, very hard. Try to transcribe some of those solos. You'll have your work cut out for you. Pat Martino falls into that category to me about breakneck speed, very great linear lines. And somebody like Al Di Meola, definitely a virtuoso. What's that album? Mediterranean Sundance with him, Paco de Lucia, and John McLaughlin playing. When I first heard that album, I thought that was sped up in some, studio, but that's how they played. All three of those guys I would consider virtuosos. Not necessarily all of them my favorite guitarists and stuff. So the point of it is that as guitar players and musicians, we are fascinated with technical abilities. Sometimes technical ability will kind of, put you backwards, to be honest with you. There are some, I'm not going to name them, but there's one person I think about that is a very, very technical player, but he's not very musical, and he didn't make this list, but that's a whole other story. But the point is that you do not have to be this great technician in order for you to play beautiful, beautiful music. If you listen to that piece with Art Farmer and Jim Hall at the beginning, um, very, very melodic. And Jim Hall is one of the most tasteful players around. Bill Frisell falls in that category. Somebody who seems like you should be able to play it. And Bill Frisell is a guitarist. Let's put it that way. If you ever go see a Bill Frisell concert, you'll just see a bunch of other guitar players. I've seen metal guys there just because he's that good. He's an innovator. And somebody you listen to if you're working, if you're just relaxing and chilling and things of that nature. So, Charlie Christian, I would not call him a virtuoso. He was a great innovator. Okay. And he had some good lines. And one of my favorite guitarists. And obviously, he influenced everybody that's probably on that list. Wes Montgomery, very, very, the thumb. That's my man. But in terms of how we consider that, a lot of what Wes was doing, not to minimize it, just even the chordal playing, block chords, but he had a way of doing something that I aspire to, and I think that's really analogous to my playing, which is like sometimes less is more. The less you know, but you know it really well, the better you'll sound. The less you'll have thinking in your head and stuff of that nature. So there are people who straddle the category that you'll hear them playing really fast. George Van Eps, I had him on there. And at first I think, say, wow, this is a odd one, just because I think that George Van Eps wasn't fast and he wasn't a shredder or things like that. But you can kind of think of him as a virtuoso or at least a prodigy, just in terms of the chordal stuff that he did, stretches that he did, playing the 7-string guitars and things of that nature. But again, these are all great players. There's tons and tons of folks that I did not include, but they definitely are virtuosos, more contemporary players. A guy like Matteo Mancuso, that whole classical technique applied to that jazz fusion stuff that he's playing, unbelievable playing at that level. And again, like I said, point of this is to say that you do not have to be a virtuoso as defined in order to be a great musician. In fact, aspiring to be one may actually thwart your growth and development. So thank you for watching. Go listen to some of these folks on this list if you haven't done so, and it'll definitely improve your playing. Thank you again. Bye now.